Okay, you are ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, thank you, and welcome everybody to this first meeting of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority in its shadow form. I'm Paul Hodgson, here on behalf of the clerk of the Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, who under new combination order was tasked with completing the first meeting of the new combined authority. This meeting is being held remotely and members are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed and may also be available for repeat viewing. Those participating in the meeting are consenting to being recorded and to the use of those images for broadcasting purposes. Now, during the meeting, if a member wishes to speak, they will indicate this by using the meeting chat function and typing RTS for request to speak. All decisions at the meeting will be reached through a vote conducted by calling out each member's name in turn and asking them for their vote of for, against or abstain. And the outcome of votes will be confirmed by Katie Sherwood, the Democratic and Member Services Officer. And then once those votes are confirmed, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And I'd just like to remind members to please keep your microphones muted unless you've been called to speak, and to note that you may be visible on the screen and to the public and to other members even when you're not speaking. Okay, so I will just read a list of all members who are present, and we have Councillor Carter, Councillor Chad, Councillor Mintoff, Councillor Fairhurst, Councillor Glenn, Councillor Hockley, Councillor Price, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Vaughan and Councillor Zacherley. So we can now move to the agenda, and item 1 on the agenda is election of chairman. Under the new combination order, the authority must elect a chairman and may elect a vice chairman. I'll therefore ask for nominations for chairman, and what I would suggest is that members appoint the chairman and vice chairman for the remainder of this municipal year, rather than as set out on the agenda until the meeting of the Combined Fire Authority in 2021. That'll just avoid, I think, us having any little gap between 31st of March and the elections in May that we need to sort of fill and don't have continuity. So if I can ask for nominations for chairman, please.
Paul, I'd like to nominate Councillor Carter for chairman of the Shadow Authority, please.
Paul, I'd like to second that.
Okay. Sorry, okay, we have a nomination and that's been seconded. Do we have any other nominations? We don't appear to, so we will, for transparency purposes, go through the voting process. So I'll hand over to Katie Sherwood for that.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. I will call members in alphabetical order, and if you could just state for, against or abstain. Thank you. So Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Chad.
For.
Councillor Fairhurst.
For.
Councillor Zacherley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Glenn.
For.
Councillor Hockley.
For.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Mintoff.
For.
Councillor Price.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
And Councillor Vaughan.
For.
Thank you. So that's unanimous in support of Councillor Chris Carter as chairman.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So, Councillor Carter, I'll be meeting to you as chairman of the new combined authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, members, for your confidence in myself and electing me as chairman of the first shadow board. Turning to the agenda, first of all, is election of vice chairman, and I would propose that the vice chairman should be Ros Chad. Is there a seconder for that nomination?
I'll second Councillor Chad to be Vice Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other nominations? No. So back to you then, Katie. Can we go through the same procedure, please?
You're not using that, are you?
Thank you. I'll go through in alphabetical order again. So Councillor Carter,
4.
Councillor Chad,
4,
Councillor Fairhurst,
4.
Councillor Vasakali,
4,
Councillor Glenn,
4.
Councillor Hockley,
4.
Councillor Mintoff.
Oh, heavens, it worked.
Thank you. Councillor Price,
4.
Councillor Simpson,
4.
Councillor Stewart,
4.
and Councillor Vaughan.
4.
Thank you again. That's unanimous in support of Councillor Chad as Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Katie. I can detect that we are gaining from our training and experience in doing this voting, because we've improved a lot since we started first thing this morning.
Yeah, certainly I have.
Yes.
Yeah. Noted.
It couldn't get worse, Jim.
Thank you very much. It'll be a quicker meeting.
Right. Returning to the agenda, item 3, apologies for absence. Well, everybody, I'm delighted to say everybody is present. I'm very pleased that Jason is able to join us today. He has had some IT problems, so well done, Jason, for sorting those out. I particularly wanted to make sure, as this is the first meeting of the Shadow Board, we had all our constituent authorities present, so that is good. Item 4, declarations of interest. I will read it for the benefit of the tape. To enable members to disclose to the meeting any disclosable pecuniary interest they may have in any matter on the agenda for the meeting, where that interest is not already entered in the authority's register of interest, and any other pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any such matter that members may wish to disclose. Well, members, you're all really familiar with that, I know. If anything comes up in the meeting that you think have an interest in, please indicate at the time. Deputations, we have none. Item 6 is Chairman's announcements. I don't really have any announcement other than to say what an important meeting this is, the very first meeting of the Shadow Board. It was, I think, probably 6 years ago when I was in Newport with my predecessor as chairman, Royston Smith, when there was a photo call for the commencement of DDIP, delivering differently in partnership, which was the two fire services working closely together. Very much the forerunner of what we're doing now. And I can remember that there was discussion. Royston and I said, well, that should be a goal for the future, the new combined authority. And we started consultation in 2018, and then in January 19, papers went before all the 4 authorities and were agreed. And then summer 2019, an application went to the Secretary of State. I think we had some delay because of Brexit, but we are where we are now, and we have the Shadow Board coming into effect on the 1st of April and the combined authority will come into effect on the 1st of April next year. And I think that's an important and monumental step forward. The four authorities have a population of well over 2 million. Perhaps not this year, but in most years, because the Isle of Wight's population more than doubles in the summer. Well, I don't know what it goes to, but it's a colossal population in the summer. And we hope the Isle of Wight can get back to that as soon as the lockdown measures are relaxed. So it is an important occasion. This will be a fairly short meeting, and the subsequent meetings will be slightly longer, I'm sure, as we begin to deal with the issues that will come before us. So that is my only comment. I'll ask Dave Stewart to make a comment on behalf of the Isle of Wight. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Almost getting telepathic because I couldn't write quick enough to confirm I'd like to do that. First of all, thank you very much. Thank you to all the members of the authority. We have been fortunate that we have had a terrific relationship with Hampshire, certainly during my term of office as leader of the Isle of Wight Council, and the professionalism of the organisation, whether it's on the Isle of Wight or in Hampshire, stands out, I think, and we are extremely grateful for the work that's undertaken. I wrote down, I welcome the new Combined Fire Authority, and I look to continuation of that positive working relationship that we have had. For me, it's become a relatively seamless transfer because we've already had a positive experience. And certainly I can speak for the Isle of Wight Council and the administration there that we are looking forward to continuing the good work that's been going on. And I'm pleased to be part of the team.
Thank you, Dave. We're delighted that you are part of the team and that you were able to join us today, and we look forward to next April when it all becomes official.
Yeah.
Okay, so that concludes announcements. So item 7 is member development. I don't think we've got anything. Well, has anybody got anything they want to say at this stage? I don't think there's anything really. There will be next time, I'm sure. So item 8, this is you, Paul. Constitutional arrangements for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Shadow Authority. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, you've got the paper at agenda item 8, starts at page 3 in the pack. This is very much a paper to set up the constitutional and governance arrangements for the new combined authority, both during its shadow period, but also to enable it to seamlessly transition into the full authority period on the 1st of April 2021. Now, at paragraph 5, there's some background set out about the new combination order coming into force on 1st of April 2020. And so the new combined authority is constituted from that point. But until 31st of March 2021, it exists only for the performance of functions necessary for bringing the combination scheme into full force. So that's the shadow period. The remainder of the order comes into force on 1st of April 2021, and at that point, the new combined authority assumes responsibility for the fire and rescue functions in the area. The order provides for elected members to be appointed from the constituent authorities, and in accordance with the business case, previous discussions, etc., the initial number of members is 11, which is the number that must be in place on the 1st of April 2021, and thereafter numbers to be determined by the authority up to a maximum of 25. So moving on to paragraph 7 in the report, that sets out the political composition of the new authority, and there's an appendix 1, that summarises that. And in the same way that we would do for Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, if we were appointing to committees, we would appoint in a politically proportionate way in accordance with that table. Now, we don't believe we will need to appoint to committees during the shadow year, but if we do, that's the basis on which we do it. There is a section in the report starting at paragraph 8, which sets out the regulations that came into force in April 2020 to allow us to hold virtual meetings. And so, for members' awareness, that's the legal basis on which we are holding this meeting virtually. Paragraph 11 on page 5 then moves on to constitutional arrangements. And the key thing to note here is that the new combined authority is subject to the same local government legal requirements as apply to Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority and similarly apply to Isle of Wight Council. So that means the usual democratic processes must be followed, meetings must be held in public, access to information requirements apply. It also means that the combined authority needs to designate a monitoring officer and chief financial officer. And so we are proposing that in order to make the shadow period run as efficiently and as effectively as possible, we mirror the arrangements that are in place with Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority and appoint the Chief Executive of Hampshire County Council, John Coughlin, as the Clerk and Monitoring Officer, and also Rob Carr as the new authority's Chief Financial Officer. And that will essentially enable us to run the shadow authority period in exactly the same way that we run Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, so should hopefully be easier for officers and members and mean that we don't have too much duplication or additional administrative burden. So moving on then to paragraph 16, the new authority will need to adopt certain constitutional documents and arrangements to enable it to undertake its functions effectively. And what we are proposing happens is that the new combined authority adopts a modified version of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority's constitutional arrangements, which makes sense given that Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority is already a combined fire and rescue authority, so we've put in place all the things that are needed. So we've created a modified version of that constitution which can be adopted, and that is at Appendix 2. Now, the table that then starts at paragraph 90 and on page 6 summarises how during this shadow period the Constitution will apply, because until the new combined authority assumes responsibility for all of the fire and rescue functions, not all parts of the Constitution necessarily apply or make complete sense to apply. So the table sets out which bits will apply with immediate effect, and those largely are the parts that set out the full authority's terms of reference, etc. But they apply with the caveat that during this shadow period, they are applying to the shadow authority's powers effectively to bring the combination scheme into full force. So although they apply, they don't grant the new authority any powers over the existing operational fire and rescue functions until April 2021. There are some elements that don't apply until April 2021, which are summarised in the table. So that includes standards and governance committee terms of reference, because we don't need to appoint to standards and governance committee yet. Similarly, the stakeholder committee terms of reference, the pension board, etc. Scheme of delegation will apply, and the various rules of procedure will apply. And I think it's important to note that in respect of the rules of procedure, we're suggesting that where there are references to the chief fire officer or to other officers of the authority, that during the shadow period, those references be construed as meaning the relevant officer in Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, because obviously until 1st of April 2021, those officers are not officers of the new combined authority. And you will see in the appendix, the table is reproduced at the outset of the Constitution. That's at pages 14 and 15. And that's to ensure that the Constitution as a standalone document works, and that members and anyone else who see it can see at the outset which bits apply immediately and which bits apply later. And there are notes in there, again, referring to the fact that references to officers will be construed as officers of Hampshire Fire and Rescue, and very important note too, that the Constitution during the shadow period will be interpreted in a purposive way that's consistent with the functions of the shadow authority during that period. So hopefully that makes sense and will enable us to operate constitutionally in a way very similar to Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, therefore should be hopefully restricted to both members and officers. Now, we're not proposing at this stage to appoint various other roles that we normally would in the in Hampshire Fire and Rescue at this point, but those appointments will happen this time next year when we move into the full combined authority period. The report moves on at paragraph 23 to include a recommendation that the authority agrees a dispensation for members in respect of the council tax precept. Now, this is something that you might find your own authorities do. Some do, some don't. It's not necessarily strictly required, but it removes any doubt as to whether you have a conflict when it comes to setting the precept by virtue of owning property, a house or land in Hampshire. So that is what that paragraph's about, and that really is the substance then of the report concluded. And so at that point, quite happy to take any questions from members before we move on to recommendations.
Right, thank you very much, Paul. Right, Roger Price, got a question, please.
Thank you, Chris. My concern is paragraph 13. Paragraph 13 really is quite historic, is that when the fire service was a committee of Hampshire County Council, it was only right that the chief executive covered those sort of positions. But I believe strongly now we're going into a new authority, and therefore what we should be is totally standalone. And I believe myself that the John Coughlin, or the chief executive of the county council, should not be the clerk to the fire authority. I believe that the chief fire officer should be the clerk to the fire authority. In the same way is the chief executive to any local authority is always the clerk. And I think we need to set out our total independence as from now in starting off this new authority. So from my point of view, I would not agree with the chief executive of the Hampshire County Council being the clerk to the fire authority. Thank you.
Right. Paul, do you want to comment on that?
I mean, this is a matter, I think, that the authority can make various decisions on. It may be something that is worth reconsidering after the shadow authority period, possibly, for the simple reason that if John Coughlin isn't appointed clerk and monitoring officer, then the authority will still need to appoint a monitoring officer. Appointing John Coughlin as the clerk and monitoring officer at this point enables those functions to be delivered by myself and Katie's team through the sort of Hampshire County Council scheme of delegation. So it basically enables us to run in the same way as Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority. So there is a sort of a neatness to that. So That is why we've started from that position. But if the authority wants to depart from that, it will still need to appoint a monitoring officer, and it will still need to ensure that the democratic processes are all handled in the way that largely we handle them for Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority at the moment.
Liz Fairhurst. So Liz Fairhurst wants to...
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Paul, can I just ask you a question? What are you saying? Are you saying that if John is no longer our monitoring officer, we would lose the services of you and Katie and would have to appoint them independently?
Yes, effectively, you would need the monitoring officer role is one that is an individual role, so it needs to be an individual needs to be appointed, and in John appointed clerk, it enables effectively us to easily then deliver those functions and the democratic functions on his behalf. Now, we could structure that in a different way and still deliver them, I think, so it isn't impossible.
Sorry, Chairman.
Can I come back, Chairman? Sorry.
Yes, go on. Carry on.
Yes. Is Rob with us this afternoon? And if not, Paul or Katie, perhaps one of you two could answer this. Is the fire authority actually charged for your services at the moment through the county council, or are you just doing us an enormous favour by doing it?
There is a written charge.
Yeah, we do them under SLA arrangements, and so we recover the cost of delivering the services on a cost recovery basis.
So on that basis, sorry, Neil, Paul, in a way, I guess, it's an awkward question to be able to answer in this context, because Paul is the one delivering that particular SLA, but actually he's duty bound to advise the Shadow Authority should it be appointed in this way. But in essence, I guess at this stage, even if you chose it to be via me, I think probably the services we would still use would be exactly what you see in front of you. So that would be my proposal. I don't suppose there's much difference in that regard. It's just not having the Chief Executive of the Hampshire County Council on this particular typeface, but it means I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference to the outcome at this time. But it may make a difference in terms of the SLA, I don't know, Paul. But so I'm not sure. It may just be a tidying up issue, as Roger suggests. It may just cause massive confusion, which we don't need.
I think just one thing that may be worth comment from Katie is whether it would cause any issues from, the current publication of papers and all of those arrangements. Is that something that would be more difficult, Katie, if?
Yeah,
Chris?
I suppose potentially it's something that would have to be looked into. Yeah.
Chris?
Dave Stewart, you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I've got a sort of couple of questions, a couple of comments really. Is there any precedent set elsewhere that we could look to? From Neil's perspective, I sort of see that suggestion as aligning to the fact our Chief Executive is the clerk to the Lord Lieutenant on the Isle of Wight, so there kind of is an analogy there a little bit. I particularly don't have a problem with the finance officer, because that happens in a number of other bodies that I'm engaged with. So, for example, I chair the Hampshire Police and Crime Panel, and Rob Carr, through his team, supports the panel, and we pay for that, and it's a recognised process. So that I don't have anything to do with. The only and the monitoring officer, we have a very good monitor on the Isle of Wight, but equally, I would have thought John Cochran could provide that service very usefully. The only thing for me was a conflict of interest point, in the sense that Neil, as I understand it, under the new authority, will be, if you like, answerable to the new authority. Period. He doesn't have any direct and accountability to Hampshire County Council. He is for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Fire Authority. So does that give it a better and more independent approach? I don't know. It's not about the individuals concerned, because I have no problem with any of those. It's just about thinking about the most appropriate way in which we manage this particular issue. And of course, if you're the clerk to the chairman of the fire authority, then probably the chairman has some thoughts on that as well. So it's really looking at that. I wouldn't have a difficulty on either approach, but I don't know the logistics of Hampshire and Neil in particular, what his thoughts are, because I wasn't expecting that question.
Yeah, Chris.
Councillor Simpson.
Roger, you're coming back first.
Roger, you're on mute still.
There we are. Sorry about that. If you look at the agenda for this morning, I mean, we have Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, and then it goes in and produces John Coughlin's name underneath it with the Castle Winchester, Hampshire. And I just think it gives a misunderstanding going out into the public arena. Now, what I would have liked to see is the agendas coming from our Chief Fire Officer and the services which we buy in from Hampshire County Council, which are excellent, and I have no problems whatsoever with those whatsoever. We would buy those in as we are paying for them at the moment, but would be specifically buying it in Katie's and Paul's and Rob's services. Now, it then just makes it the agenda when they go out into the public arena will not be possibly seen as coming from Hampshire County Council, and therefore connecting the fire service to Hampshire County Council. And I think, you know, we're going to be a nice, good, big, independent unit, and I think we should just make sure that everybody sees us as that. Thank you.
Okay, so now I've got David Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Neil is the head of paid service, who would normally be the clerk, and as I understand it, so I have no problem with the Chief Fire Officer becoming the clerk, and I recognise the historical sides, but I wonder, looking at how we're going into this, this is a shadow board. Should we not ask the shadow board to bring a report back to us next meeting after, so we can look at all of the questions that are coming out and then make a decision for the combined authority for next year? So we do it now as written, but we look at it and say, actually, is this the best way to go? After all, that's what the shadow board is meant to be doing, looking at things and saying, is this the best way to go? And by the way, Jonathan keeps trying to get in, but I don't know whether he writes RTS or not, but he does keep trying to get in.
That's for Sharon.
Right, okay, thank you for that. I've got Sharon Mintoff now, and then Jonathan.
Ah, great.
Sharon, you're first.
Yeah.
Just to comment on this, when we get our council agendas in Southampton City Council, it comes from the head of paid service, who is our chief executive. So, you know, I'm supporting Roger's point that, you know, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority isn't a committee of Hampshire County Council. It's a new combined authority. And I think that our clerk and monitoring officer on our paperwork should reflect that. Thank you.
Okay, Jonathan. You're muted, Jonathan.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Chairman. Interesting debate, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I really think we should actually press on with what is being recommended in the paper. But I do like, and I was going to say it before Councillor Simpson, the idea that we discuss it at some of our own internal meetings, because there is quite an interesting legal debate, philosophical debate to be had about this as to the best way forward. And we've got a year. We've got a year until we actually have until we start working as a combined authority in April next year. I would be interested to know to be involved in the debate that's going to take place amongst ourselves as to whether it should be the chief executive of Hampshire County Council or somebody internally. But for the moment, I think we should press on with what we've got on the paper, which is what I will vote for. But I don't want to discard the idea of maybe let's just see how it goes. We may well believe later on that it's a good idea. I hope everybody else agrees with that.
Right, I've got Dave Stewart again, please. Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to unmute. Yeah, I am quite attracted to this opportunity to look at this because I think that is what the Shadow Board is about. I think we need to get established, which is what we're doing today. But I do, and I can see a number of reasons. I was thinking off the back of something somebody said, it would be interesting for me to take that to the Isle of Wight Council and see what their thoughts were. I mean, one of the advantages is using Neil in particular, and then if he was not available, Steve. These are independent individuals from the new authority level, and that giving them that status has quite a wide impact on the community when they see and read that. So we've always had a fantastic partnership with Hampshire, so it's not about that. This is about perception in the eyes of the public, I think, is what we're dealing with here and how we want this to look. And so I could see a very wise move would be to take the papers as read at this time, but to put it as an agenda item, show the public that we've noted that it's been raised by the authority members, and we're going to go away and have a look at that topic. That allows the public to say, well, okay, that was a sensible way, and we look forward to seeing what conclusion they come to in due course.
Right, thank you. Any other speakers on this this particular issue, paragraph 13? I'm bound to say, as your chairman, I would have preferred to have had some prior knowledge of this coming up, because, as Jonathan said, we've had quite a lot of discussion already at our private meetings about the shadow, about the setting up of the shadow board, and this wasn't mentioned, and it's come up.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Roger Price wishes to come back again.
Thank you, Chris. I'm having listened to the debate. I'm very happy to agree with what's on the papers at the moment, but providing we can amend our resolution or recommendation at the end to add a new paragraph which says that during the coming year, as a combined authority and an interim combined shadow authority, that we review the situation about those positions. I'm quite happy if that's added to it as a resolution, then that is done. And we look at the pros and the cons, because there are some advantages and disadvantages possibly, and we don't know all the ins and outs now. Regarding people's comments about wish they'd had notice, don't forget we haven't had these papers very long, and the communications between people are not quite so easy under these shutdown procedures as they used to be.
Okay, right, thank you, Roger. Sharon, you wish to comment further? Sharon Mintoff?
Yes, it's a completely separate issue. Recommendation 42 needs rewording. It grants a dispensation to all members of the authority who own a house or land in the authority's administrative area. That needs to be who has a home or house or land. That reflects that not necessarily every member of this fire authority will own their own home, either now or looking into the future. That is the wording that we use on Southampton City Council for the dispensation when it comes to setting council tax and the precept. Thank you.
I think you're meaning is a council taxpayer within the authority's area.
Yes, it needs to reflect that, not everybody owns their own home. So that, whereas the wording that we've got in the current recommendation is actually pretty prescriptive in that respect. So it would need to be amended.
Paul, do you want to come back on that 42, please?
I think that's probably fine to amend in that way. The reason it's worded slightly differently though here is because the the Fire and Rescue Authority doesn't directly, it's not a council tax billing authority, it raises a precept on the council tax billing authority. So it was more reflecting the definitions of disclosable pecuniary interest rather than that position of being a council taxpayer. But I think it's actually, there's no harm in having it slightly wider so that there's no doubt. So I think it'd be a useful amendment to put in.
So we could amend that to say on the first line, if we put
who has a home or house or land. So it's replace own with has and add in a home.
As a home or land. All right.
Thank you.
Right. We're on the. Any other speakers on any other?
Chairman, Jonathan here.
Yes.
Councillor Glenn. On that 42, I'm looking for guidance. Should we include close family members? No.
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 I don't
Not necessary. I'd like to hear from.
They're not voting on the council tax or precept, so.
I don't think so.
Okay, right. We'll leave it with that then. Okay.
So we know that at meetings of this shadow board, we're going to have various papers. We've got a financial paper that's probably going to come in July. So you want an amendment to say that we're going to look at the appointments of the clerk and monitoring officer. Is that what you're proposing? That is number 38.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt. I've just brought the recommendations up with some suggestions just so we can all see them and it's a bit clearer what we're going to do.
So number 38 appoints John.
Katie, I can't read that at all. It's too small.
Well, you've got the recommendation.
I've got the paper in front of me. Yes.
Paper. So number 38 is what you're talking about. Points John Coghlan. You want to add to that and agrees to review this appointment. Is that what you want to say?
Yes. What I want, and I think that others have said that yes, we should have a paper at some point in the year looking at it. That's what I want to make sure is added into what we're agreeing today. So whether you add it to paragraph 38 or that you have a separate paragraph 43, I don't mind. I mean, all I want to get it written down and agreed is that we're going to review that situation and look at all the advantages and disadvantages.
I'm asking you for your proposal. So what do you want to add to paragraph 38 then?
I'm quite happy for 38 to stay. I would add 43 is that we review during the coming, we have reports. I haven't written it down.
Councillor Price?
Yeah.
At the moment, I've added a draft recommendation that says that the Shadow Authority will continue to review the positions in recommendations 3 and 4 over the course of the municipal year.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
That's it. Perfect. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then for the recommendation before, I've changed that to grants dispensation to all members of the authority who has a home or land. Was that what was agreed?
I thought it was home. I thought we were going to keep house. Home, house or land.
And it should be have, not has.
Yeah.
Has, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. That's perfect.
Right.
Can I just ask one other question of Paul, please? is that during the course of the year report, if we have these papers and we want to make any changes, is it easy to make changes to a constitutional document, constitution governance document from a recommendation from a paper, or is there a long-winded process we may have to go through?
No, it's within the authority's gift to amend its constitution at any point just by a decision of the authority, as long as it's not doing something that is outside of what the combination order says.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Right, we're with the recommendations on page 9 and 10, but before that I'm going to go to Rob Carr, who's been patiently listening to all of this debate. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Not wishing. Well, actually, I sort of need to declare an interest. I noticed that Katie's recommendation covers both 3 and 4, and 4 is my appointment. And I didn't know if that was your intention to review that as well, because it's a slightly different issue, because I'm appointed through the shared service arrangement, which has lots of other things attached to it. So
Yeah.
entirely happy if you wish to review that, but I'm not sure if that was the intention.
Well, it was not my intention, so I'll be quite happy to take out 4 altogether.
That's fine. Sorry about that, Rob. I've removed that.
Right, thank you for that point, Rob. No other comments, so we return to the recommendations, which are on page 9 and 10. I will read all these out, and then I'll come to you, Katie, for 42 and 43, and then we'll take a vote. So, recommendation 36, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority notes the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility in local authority meetings and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales Regulation 2020, and their effects in enabling the authority to hold virtual meetings as set out in this report. 37, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority notes the political composition of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority as set out at Appendix 1. Appendix 1 is page 11. Number 38, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority appoints John Coghlan, Chief Executive, Hampshire County Council, as Clerk and Monitoring Officer of the Authority. 39, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority appoints Rob Carr as Chief Financial Officer of the Authority. 40, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority adopts with immediate effect the parts of the Constitution set out at paragraph 19 of Appendix 2, which are stated to be applicable from the 3rd of June, today, 2020, and notes and agrees those parts of the Constitution that will only apply with effect from 1st of April 2021. 41, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority agrees that from today, 3rd of June 2020 to 31st of March 2021, references to the Chief Fire Officer or to other specific officers such as the Chief of Staff in any parts of the Constitution that apply from the 3rd of June 2020 shall be construed as meaning the Chief Fire Officer or other specific officer of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority. 42, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority grants a dispensation to all members of the authority who have a home or land in the authority's administrative area to participate and vote in any item of the authority business connected to setting the precept. Was that what you wanted? Was that correct?
You missed out house.
Oh, have a home or house.
Or land.
have a
home, house or land.
Have a home or house or land. Okay. Right. Now I come to you, Katie. Can you read out what you recommended for 43?
Yes, so the final recommendation added is that the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority will continue to review the positions in recommendation 3 over the course of the municipal year.
Right. Obviously, that's now singular, Katie. Position, not positions.
Thank you.
Right.
Hello.
So, if you're all content with those recommendations as they've been set out, I'll ask Katie to take a block vote. Right.
Katie, you're on mute now.
With you, Katie.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I think it's because my screen was unsharing. So, Councillor Carter?
4.
Councillor Chad?
4.
Councillor Fairhurst?
4.
Councillor Vazacali?
4.
Councillor Glenn?
4.
Councillor Hockley?
Kate, I have a slight problem. I don't like the use of the word house. I prefer dwelling. I mean, it could be they have a hotel. It doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily tie it down to a house.
I think because it's home or house, I think that could apply. Do you think, Paul?
Yes.
I think that covers probably all possibilities. Essentially, where the member lives. So
I think home covers everything.
Yeah.
I think we should be content with home or house.
In that case, I vote for it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mintoff?
4.
Sleep better now.
Councillor Price?
4.
Councillor Simpson?
4.
Councillor Stewart?
4.
And Councillor Vaughan?
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous in support of the recommendations.
Right. Well, thank you all for that. That concludes the meeting. It was slightly longer than perhaps some of us anticipated. Now, I think Neil Oding wishes to add the comment.
Members, just before we sign off, can I just thank you all once again for your efforts across all constituent authorities, and thank you for your leadership, because making the Shadow Authority and the combination order a reality obviously took a lot of work for officers behind the scenes and Paul and team with Home Office colleagues. But you now find yourself as the shadow board of what is likely to be the most efficient CFA across the land. And for per head of population across over 2 million people. So that's something to be really praise yourselves for. It also enables me as your chief officer to lead an efficient and effective service whilst protecting the safety of our communities in these difficult times. So I'm really grateful for your leadership and your bravery of making this happening. So I just thought I'd add those words from the service to you as our political leaders in terms of the future. I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just, on your behalf, members, also thank the officers for all the work that has gone into preparing for this. In my opening remarks, I did comment on the fact that we've been several years getting to this first meeting, and Paul has been working at this time ages and ages, and well, have you been working at home preparing these long reports, Paul?
Yes, I've been working from home since sometime in March. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done to all you and your team, and carry on the good work, because we've got I think the next meeting will be in July, and there'll be a lot more for the Shadow Board to consider in July. So on that note, thank you all for your attendance today, and we can conclude this meeting at just